Thank you again, Rabbi Kahn, for another class. Without further ado, Rabbi Kahn.
Thank you very much for allowing me to speak again, and I look forward to being able to share some very interesting thoughts about Shavuos and different things. In the end, I'm going to talk hopefully about some of the different interesting customs that Jews practice on Shavuos, including, of course, the most famed eating cheesecake. So we're still not yet at Shavuos, and we're still finishing up the time period of Sefiras Ha'omer. And as we've discussed in former classes, Sefiras Ha'omer really, as explained by Rav Dessler, is a time of self-introspection and perfection. We're trying to perfect ourselves and work on ourselves to get to the point where we are better people. And hopefully, obviously, when we get to Shavuos, which is the time that we describe as Zman Matan Torah Seinu, the time which we are given the Torah, we would be different. And this concept is really hinted to already in the Torah itself. Because the two bookends we have are Pesach, which is the Korban Omer, which we discussed, again, Sefiras Ha'omer, the counting of the Omer being the sacrifice of the Omer. That was barley. And on Shavuos, we bring a special sacrifice called the Shtei Halechem, the two breads. The two breads were wheat. Now the difference is that barley typically was animal feed, while wheat is typically person food. So in a sense, the Torah is telling us that we're moving from being more animalistic to becoming more person-like and moving forward in that way. Now, we mentioned that from the Sefer HaChinuch, that the reason that we count, obviously, the main reason that we count is because God told us to. But besides that fact, there's some meaning behind the counting that we can connect to allow us to connect to it better, for it to have more meaning and an effect on ourselves. So the reason we count is because whenever a person is really looking forward to something, whenever there's something that's in the future, you can look forward to it. It helps you. Like, for example, I remember when I was in college, I was an NCSY advisor in college. I went to YU, and most of the time, one of the big Shabbatons, the winter regional, was during finals or right before finals. So it was absolutely crazy for me to be going to any Shabbaton. So what I had to do beforehand was I would just like push myself like crazy, but I know I was counting the days, that I was just like, okay, you know what, all I got to do is one more day, and one more day, you know, because I'm looking forward to that time where I'm looking up to. So with that count, you're really looking forward to it. Now with this idea, the Abu Darham, who lived in about the 1300s, explains another custom that some people have to learn Pirkei Avos, the ethics of our fathers, specifically during the time of Sfira, because Pirkei Avos really is one of the Mishnayos that's dealing with becoming more connected to Torah, becoming more alacritous in our service of Hashem, so which is perfect for the time before Matan Torah, where we really want to connect with that. Now, as I said, the end of Sefiras Ha'omer, really day 50, is Shavuos. The time in which we describe it as I mentioned, was Zman Matan Torah Seinu, the time of the giving of the Torah. Now, we're going to talk about that language a little bit later. But what's very interesting is that if you look in the Torah actually never gives us a date, meaning a specific day on the calendar in which Shavuos falls. Meaning, right, we know that Rosh Hashanah is the first day of the year. It's the first day of the 7th month, right? We know that in the Jewish calendar. And we know that Pesach is the 15th day of Nisan. We know that, right? Shavuos, however, if we look, doesn't have a date. It says as follows in Parshas Emor, where it discusses many, many, many of the holidays. It says, "Usfartam lachem mimarchas haShabbos miyom haviachem es omer hatenufa sheva Shabbosos tivimos tihyena." That you should count for yourself from the day after Pesach, the day in which you bring the Omer. That's the special offering that one brings on the second day of Pesach. 7 complete weeks, which again is exactly what we are in the middle of. And it says, ad, until, mimacharas hashabas hashviz, until after the 7th week, tisperu chamishim yom. You should count 50 days. Vikravtem mincha chadasha lashem. And on that 50th day, you should bring a new korban. So what day is it on the calendar? Seemingly 50 days after the Korban Omer. It's very interesting. Now, just to show you the contrast, I will bring you how the Torah explains when, as I mentioned before, Rosh Hashanah. And all the other holidays are similar. It says, Da'aber al b'nei Yisrael lemor, speak to b'nei Yisrael saying, B'chodesh hashvi'i be'echad lachodesh, on the 7th month, first day of the month. Right? It's pretty clear. Which month? Which day? But as we mentioned before, that was not true by Shavuos. It only says, count 7 perfect weeks, and the 50th day, bring a sacrifice. Unbelievable. It doesn't say what specific day. And in fact, the Gemara talks about how Shavuos could really fall out on 3 separate days. Doesn't always have to be the Vav Sivan. Doesn't have to be the 6th of Sivan. Now, again, today we have a set calendar. Ever since Hillel Sheni, the second Hillel, the first Hillel was Hillel Hazakin. That's, like Beis Hillel, Beis Shammai, Hillel and Shammai, the 2 great Tanoim that we hear about. Hillel Sheni was his many descendants after. So he set the calendar. So from then, we know that every single year, the day of Shavuos is going to be set. But before then, it was not set, and it could actually be on 3 separate days. So what we see is that, in fact, Shavuos may not be directly connected with the day in which the Torah was given. In fact, right, just to really clarify this, in Shulchan Aruch, the book which is the modern day start for somebody who wants to really do a lot of in-depth research into what the halacha is. So he starts, again, this is the title of the chapter is the order of davening on Shavuos. And in it there are three paragraphs. So the first paragraph starts, Bayom chamishim l'Sefiras Ha'omer hu Chag Shavuos. On the 50th day of Sefiras Ha'omer is Chag Shavuos. Very interesting, right? He doesn't say that it's the 6th of Sivan. He just says it's the 50th day of Sefiras Ha'omer. Now, as I said, it may not be directly connected with the date, the exact day in which the Torah was given. And this was a question that was already asked many, many centuries ago in the 16th century. 17th century, in the 1600s, by the Magen Avram, of Avram Gambener. He asks, Kashali, I don't understand. Heyich anu omrim b'shavuos yom matan Torasenu. How do we say the day of the giving of the Torah? Halo kaimalan karebi yosi, tamer b'zayim b'siva nasna Torah. He says, last I checked, we rule that it was given on the 7th day of Sivan, not on the 6th day of Sivan. That's very interesting. Now, he has his whole answer. He has a separate answer, and he wants to say that it's a hint, really, to the second 2 days of a holiday that we have outside of Israel, right? Because in Israel, all the holidays are really only 1 day, except for Rosh Hashanah. Besides Rosh Hashanah, every other holiday is only 1 day. However, outside of Israel, due to the fact that they didn't have a set calendar, and it wasn't really clear whether this day was the holiday or the next day was the holiday. They didn't know. They knew it was one of 2 days or so, but they didn't know exactly which one. So they had to do both because it wasn't clear. So why we do that today, why we still do that even though we know exactly what day it's going to be, is a whole other discussion. But he says that this was a hint to the concept of 2 days of Yontif outside of Israel. Now, the Chok Yaakov, a much later commentary, he explains that there's really no question in the first place, because the Torah does not connect the holiday of Shavuos with the day in which the Torah was given itself, rather the 50th day of the Omer. It's just that we know that today, because of the way we have a set calendar, it will always fall out on Vav Nisan, but really it has nothing to do with the specific day in which the Torah was given. It's very, very interesting, because again, this is not the typical way of thinking. Now, to summarize the point, is that it seems from the Torah already, and further questioning when you look into the sources, that the day of Shavuos is not directly connected to the day in which the Torah was given. And that is because it's the 50th day of the Omer, meaning Shavuos falls out on the 50th day of the Omer. Now, it happens to be Zman Matan Torah, saying the time in which we received the Torah, we got the Torah, we were given the Torah, but it's not necessarily that specific day. Now, quite fascinating. If I would ask the audience what they would think. Okay, so let me give you a scenario. This is one of the scenarios that it terrifies me because there's so many questions about it. It's so fascinating. Here you go. You have a person. He is from, let's say, Jacksonville, LA, somewhere in the United States. Doesn't really matter. And he decides that, you know what I'm going to do? I have a great idea. I want to go to Australia. Great, right? Fine. So he decides that he's going to go to Australia during Sefiras Ha'omer. That's the time he could work it out, his schedule, fine. So now he lands in Australia. So he went from, let's say, from California, it's easiest, and he went west. He continued west over the date line to Australia. So now let's say he left on the 30th day of the Omer, and he got there on the 31st or 32nd day of the Omer, right, depending on timing and whatever. But he got there, he basically skipped a day. So now his count that he started, he was on day 30. And when he landed, it was still daytime. But they were a day ahead. They were on day 31 already. So at nighttime, they would count day 32. So what day of Shavuos does he hold? Does he go with the people in Australia? Or does he go with his own day of Shavuos? Now, if you would have asked me the question before, I don't know what the general opinion is on this. I don't. And this is a very interesting opinion. But there is an opinion of a very great rabbi who says that you keep your own day of Shavuos, because Shavuos is directly connected to the count of Sefira. So that person who flew over the date line would have to keep his own Shavuos, basically. Very fascinating, unbelievable. But you see here, the point is that you see the intense connection that we have between Shavuos and Sefiras Ha'omer. Now, obviously, if that question comes up, ask the rabbi. Complicated, ask the rabbi. But there is an opinion like that. So you see that there's such an intense connection between Sefira and Shavuos, is that we're working through this time of trying to perfect ourselves to get to a point where we are at Zman Matan Torah Seinu. Okay, so again, just to summarize, is that generally one would think that Shavuos is connected to the day of the giving of the Torah. But it seems that really Shavuos is the end of Sefiras Ha'omer, where we have this whole process of bringing ourselves to the time period in which we got the Torah, but it's not necessarily directly connected to that specific day in which it was given. Actually, just as a point to that, is since we hold that it was given on the 7th of Sivan, it ends up that in Israel, they have Shavuos on the day that it was not given. They only have it on the 6th of Sivan, not on the 7th of Sivan, very interestingly. Now, this year happens to be that the 7th of Sivan will be Shabbos, so they'll end up having Shabbos, but not, it won't be Shavuos. Okay, so now, as we mentioned, in our davening, we say Zman Matan Torah. It's the time of the giving of the Torah. This is quite an interesting terminology. We don't say Yom Shanasan Bo Torah. We don't say that it's the day in which the Torah was given. Now, obviously, we discussed this earlier, why it would not say specifically the day. Why didn't it say, though, Zman Nesinas Torah Seinu, right? Why doesn't it say Zman Shanasan HaTorah in the past, right? Zman Matan Torah Seinu is not so clear to me whether it's past, present, or exactly what it is. I asked somebody else. He said he also wasn't so clear on what it was. But he could have said it very clearly. In the past, God gave us the Torah. Why didn't we say that? Now, I believe that this hints to us a very important lesson that Rashi says a few times in his explanation on the Torah. One of the times is in Parshas Kisavo. He says, the Pasuk says, Hayom hazeh Hashem Elokecha mitzavcha la'asos hasachukim ha'ela. Today, Hashem commands you to do these laws, Ve'es HaMishpatim, and other types of laws. Now, the context of this pasuk is not discussing the giving of the Torah. It's talking about different speeches that one gives at different times. For example, when they bring their first fruits, they have to say a speech. It's called Mikra Bikurim, which people are very familiar with because of the Pesach Haggadah. It's the same thing. Another time is when it's called Bir Maisros. At the end of different years in the cycle of tithing, you have to say certain things. So it's really totally out of context of Matan Torah in totality. And Rashi says over there, he notices in the verse, it says, today, Hayom Hazeh. Well, wait a second. God gave us the Torah a long time ago. It's not today. Today, again, the Torah is always speaking to every single person, even me and you, right now. Hayom Hazeh, today. So he says, where's today? So he explains, B'chol yom yihiu beinecha chadashim. Every single day, it should be brand new. Ki'ilu bo bayom nitztavisa aleim. As if today you were commanded. So what does that mean? Rashi is saying that every day is a day of getting the Torah. Each day, we're always given the Torah. That's the way we need to view it. We don't like the concept of, well, God gave the Torah to those Jews, not our Jews. No, every single day. Every single day is a new opportunity for us to get the Torah. It's not just what was given, it's what's being given. It's continuously given to us. And just to explain a further relation to this is because, again, if every single day the Torah is being given, that means that to an extent, the Torah today, right, why does it have to be given every single day? So I believe that Rashi says this, it's quoted by his grandson, the Rashbam, that Rashi said, he says, and it's in the Rashbam in Parshas Vayeshev, he says as follows, V'gam Rabbeinu Shlomo avi imi me'er ene hagola, and Rabbeinu Shlomo, our Rabbi Shlomo, that means Rashi, the father of my mother, who enlightened the eyes of the exile, Shapirish Torah Nevi'im Uksuvim, he commented on the Torah, prophets, and the writings, Nasan Lev L'Farish Pshuto Shel Mikra. He tried to explain what the meaning of the pasuk is, the simple meaning. It's not always simple, but the simple meaning. The Avani Shmuel bar of Meir Chasano Zatzal Nisvachachti Imo Ulefanov, and even I, Shmuel, that's his name, right? The son of Meir, his son-in-law, Zatzal. I argued in front of him, Vilefanov Hodali, and he admitted to me, She'ilu Hayalo Penai, if this is Rashi now, if he had time, Hayatzarich Lasos Perushim Acherim, one would have to make new explanations. Lefi Hapashtus Hamischadshim B'chol Yom, according to the simple understanding that it becomes new every single day, which means that every single day, theoretically, there's a whole new understanding of everything. That's an amazing thing. That is what Rashi means, is that every single day, there's something totally new out there. And it was as if given brand new. We have every opportunity out there to connect. There's no reason that just because, well, listen, I missed out on 1 year, 5 years, 30 years, 60 years, 80 years. I don't have any background. Doesn't matter. Rashi is telling us that every single day, there's something new. Every single day, there's what to gain. Every single day, there's a brand new Torah out there pretty much. And you have to grab it when you can. And when we can internalize this point from Rashi, it really gives us a tremendous appreciation of what we really have. It's something so special that literally every day it changes. You look at the same words 150 times and you could see something new 150 times. It's an unbelievable thing. And to really expand upon this point, because it's kind of hard to understand at first. You think again, many think like this, right? Including myself until I realized this, is that I went through grade school and then high school and then college. Most topics, you're going to have a whole different book, even though you're learning the same thing, right? If you have, in grade school, you have a biology book. And then in high school, you have a different biology book. And then in college, you have a different biology book. And in medical school, you have another biology book. It's all teaching you the same stuff, but they have a different book. Obviously, the reason is simple, is because your grade schooler doesn't have the same detail and understanding as your medical student. But what's amazing is that Torah, that's not true. In fact, if you would have a different book, we wouldn't want you to use it. Why? It's not accurate enough. Every word has to be the same. So that means my daughter, Baruch Hashem, this past year in Torah Academy, first grade, she got her beautiful new Chumash. It's the exact same Chumash, word for word, as every other Chumash that there is. Because if it wasn't, that wouldn't be a good enough Chumash. That means that me, who's much older than my daughter, right, I'm learning the exact same words as she is. And those much older than me, the greatest rabbis of the generation, are learning the exact same words as I am. Nothing different. That's so amazing, is because there is no other topic like that. You have the exact same words and you see something totally different. Totally different. It's because the Torah was given by God, and there's an amazing depth, there's an amazing perception in every single word and every single nuance. And that every single day we could see something brand new. It's unbelievable. Okay, so far we've said basically that Sefiras Ha'omer and Shavuos are really what's connected. It's the time period of giving the Torah, but not necessarily the exact day. And we don't want to talk about the exact day of giving the Torah, because that giving of the Torah is really almost always happening. And we have that ability to connect to something new all the time. And yeah. The Kutzker Rebbe, he adds an additional understanding of why we say Zman Matan Torah saying. Now, Matan means giving, from the word of no saying, like somebody who's giving somebody a present, somebody who is giving somebody some money, stuff like that. You give somebody an apple, that's no saying. He says, why don't we focus, since we have an amazing Torah, it's an amazing thing. Why don't we say, wow, the day that we received the Torah? It's a whole different perspective. It's not that Hashem gave it to us, it's that we received it. So why don't we do that? So he explains something very powerful. You would think that the Torah quote unquote, has ownership. You have your elite groups of people, those who know a lot more and those who know not as much yet. And those who know a lot more, it's more theirs than it is others. He says, absolutely not true. Given to every single Jew equally. That means me and every Jew on the street and the greatest rabbis, it was given to us just the same. There's no difference in the giving of the Torah. Hashem has given it, and as we've spoken, continuously is giving it to us all the time. There's no difference. It's your Torah just as much as anybody else, any other Jews. However, he says, there is a difference in the receiving. How much a person receives needs to be prepared on their part. They have to make themselves able, capable, and willing to receive as much of the Torah as they can. Now, I think there's, just to explain this a little bit, I think it's similar to like a business partnership where you have one partner is giving the money and there are some others who run the business, right? So those who run the business were all given the money equally. They're in a partnership. They're equal partners, right? So they were given the partnership, but how much money each of the partners who are running the business is going to be able to produce with what was given to them depends, right? If one person works harder, puts in more effort, puts in more time, more likely is that he will make more money. The person who puts in less effort and less time, likely that they will get less money. It's the same, I believe it's the same thing here, that Hashem gave us the Torah in the equal sense. All people, all Jews are welcome to the Torah just as much as any other Jew. However, the amount that they're going to be able to receive from the Torah depends on how much effort they are going to be able to, that they put in. Obviously, there are many factors to that, but so Hashem is giving us this Torah every single day, and we have to be able to prepare ourselves and get ourselves connected more so that we have that ability to be able to receive more and more and more of the Torah. Now, what's amazing is Reb Dessler points out that there's a difference between the physicality desires and the spiritual desires. Physical desire, he says, always remains the same. Is that you have, when you want the steak and you're eating the steak because you're hungry, that steak is delicious and every bite is delicious. But at a certain point, when you're too full, it makes you sick. Ugh. Ugh. As a person who has eaten way too much 1 or 2 times, if you eat 4 steaks, it's way too much. Oh, did that give me a stomach ache, right? So at a certain point, you're done. However, when you're no longer full and the experience of eating the steak has left you, now you're going to feel it again. You're going to say, oh, now I want more, right? So that means that really the experience of eating the steak is the same. There's nothing new. When I eat too much, gets you sick. And then when you don't have that satiation anymore, then you need something new. However, he says spirituality is totally different. He says every single level in which you gain of spirituality is a whole new world. It's as if you were never there before. And every single person's different level is totally different than the other person. So each person is a totally unique experience. And in fact, he says, the more you get, the more you want. There's never too much. It doesn't push you away after too long. Okay, so just to, again, recap, this is more of some ideas that we have that I wanted to share about Shavuos, where so just to summarize, number 1 is that it seems that although the time period of Shavuos is when the Torah was given, it is not directly connected to the day specifically in which the Torah was given. Rather, it is the end of the time period of Sefiras Ha'omer. Number 2 is that the giving of the Torah happens all the time, and it's a constant giving. It's never over. It never happened just in the past. It's always happening, and we have that ability to connect to it in all of its awesomeness continuously and every single day for anew. And when we do prepare for ourselves properly, then we have that ability to connect at an even greater level than we had before, which is why we mention the time as the giving of the Torah, not the receiving of the Torah, because the receiving of the Torah happens all the time as long as we make the appropriate preparations and give ourselves the ability to receive that Torah on whatever levels we can. And obviously, like we just mentioned, that Rav Dessler says that there's never too much. You're never going to just get like, oh, right? When you really make that connection and you really get into the desire, so that for more spirituality, then it's not gonna push you away. Okay. Now I want to discuss a few of just the customs that we have on Shavuos. Now, if you look in, as I mentioned the book before, it's actually right here. This called the Shulchan Aruch. In the discussions of Shavuos actually are at the very end of the laws of Pesach. So which really fits in our theme before, that really Pesach and Shavuos are connected. The Sefiras Ha'omer really connects the two. But the Ramah mentions a few customs, two of them, and we'll discuss them in order. So the first one he mentions is, he says like this: it's a custom to spread out grasses on Shavuos in shul and in the houses. Zecher l'simchas matan Torah. It's a remembrance and to obviously awaken in ourselves the memory of the happiness of the giving of the Torah. Now, when I read those words, first question that pops into my head is, okay, I got it, right? We got the Torah, but what does grass have to do with it? Where did the grass come from? Why would that remind us? So the Mishnah Berurah explains that he says, Shahayu Shama Savim, Saviv Har Sinai, Kidichsiv Hatzon Vabakar Al Yiru. So he says that there were grasses around Har Sinai, as it's mentioned in the pasuk that you shouldn't have your animals pasture there. Well, he asked the question, what were they going to pasture if there was no grass? Obviously, there must have been lots of grass. And by bringing the grass, we are remembering the place, the experience of Matan Torah by sort of bringing into our memory Har Sinai. Okay? Fine. So, again, we have grasses. I've seen before people have flowers and different things around shul. I don't think I've actually ever been in Eitz Chaim for Shavuos. I don't know if they do that, but many places do. And they have, the reason is because we want to remember Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah. Now, the Magen Avram seemingly goes one step further. I don't know that I'm not exactly sure whether these are different or the same. I'm not sure. So he says that there is a custom to specifically have trees. He says, Nagin lahamid ilanos bebeis hakenesu b'batim. And he says that there is a specific custom to have trees in the shuls and the houses. Nearly hatam, and it seems to me the reason, she has kiru shebe atzeres nidonin al peros ha'ilon v'yispalulu alayim. That we have to remember that at this time of Shavuos, we are judged on the fruits of the tree and we should daven for them. Okay, right, that makes sense. You have a time period where Chazal tell us that we're getting judged for the fruit of the tree. So put a tree there so you remember to daven for what you're going to get judged on. Makes perfect sense. Now, what's interesting is that if I would ask you about trees and holidays, I'm sure many people would not be thinking Judaism on Shavuos. Correct? I think so, right? So what's amazing, in fact, is that the Mishnah Berurah, again, the Magen Avram lived in the 1600s time, okay? Now, the Mishnah Berurah, he obviously lived much more recent. He died in 1933, but he quotes from the Chaye Adam. The Chaye Adam lived in the 1700s. So he quotes, the Mishnah Berurah quotes the Chaye Adam, who quotes the Gra, the Vilna Gaon. He lived also in the 1700s. So he says, "V'hagra bitel minhag zeh." The Gra stopped people from doing this custom of having the trees. Why? Mishum she'achshav hu chok ha'amim. Now, this is a custom of the non-Jews. L'hamedi lanus b'chag shelahem, to have trees during their holiday. Interesting. So he says beforehand, the non-Jews didn't do it. And now that the non-Jews are doing it, so we have to stop. Right? I would never have known that there was a change like this. To me, this was like, obvious that was part of their holiday. So, but it's pretty clear from the language of the Mishnah Berurah that is not true. And in fact, I suggest that anybody is interested, look on history.com. You will find some fascinating, again, this is not a class about comparative religions or anything, but it was just so fascinating. I just happened upon it while I was learning. So if you look up on history.com, you have some very fascinating information about this new non-Jewish custom about having trees on their holiday. Okay, so that's one. So we have, again, one, maybe two different customs of, you have grass because you want to remember Har Sinai, which had grass, and trees because you're going to be judged on the fruits of the tree. I'm not sure if those are two separate customs or not clear to me, but some people still do the trees. Other people do not do the trees. Why don't they do the trees? Because it became a custom of non-Jews to be doing that on their holiday, so we want to do things that are different. Now, we're going to discuss one of the most famous and important customs on Shavuos, and that is, of course, eating cheesecake. You got to have cheesecake on Shavuos, right? So where'd that come from? So this, actually, it was very interesting. It's almost, some people are almost saying totally opposite, almost opposite ideas. Quite fascinating. So here we go. So the Ramah says, everybody has the custom of eating milk products on the first day of Shavuos. V'nirli hatam. So what does he think the reason is? Shehu kimo hashnei tavshilin shalochim belel Pesach. It's similar to the two cooked items that we have on the first night of Pesach. Zeichel Pesach v'zeichel chagiga. Right? We have on our Seder plate, we have the zroa, the shank bone, and we have the beitza, the egg. So you have two things that were cooked. One is the remembrance of the Korban Pesach, that's the zroa, and you have one that's the remembrance of the Korban Chagiga, which is another sacrifice that they would bring on a holiday. So that's the egg. So to here, you would have similar. Kain ochli machol chalav v'achar kach machol basar. So too on Shavuos, you would do a similar thing. You would have, obviously different, but similar. That you eat milchik foods, and then you eat fleishik foods. And you would bring two different breads onto the table, which is in place of the mizbeach. And this was a remembrance of the two loaves that were brought, which we mentioned before, on Shavuos. So again, just like on Pesach, we have a remembrance of the two korbanos that we brought, the two sacrifices. So we have cooked foods. So too here, we have cooked foods reminding us of the sacrifice that we bring on Shavuos. There we go, right? And he says, right. Okay, so that's basically what the Ramah says. Now, obviously, I don't know many people who do this because when you bring milchiks and fleishiks to the same table, that's already, forget it. So most people that I'm aware of don't do this. I do know one rabbi who does this, but most people that I'm aware of don't do this. But they do eat cheesecake in some sorts. They have like a kiddush beforehand, and then they eat the meal later, whatever it is. So that's how the Ramah explains it, is because it's a remembrance for the sacrifice that we had. Now, other people, the Pri Chadash, she says, he doesn't like that reason. And he says, V'yoser nira lomar, I think it makes more sense to say, the reason that we do it is because today we celebrate the day that the Torah was given. Obviously, we know that it's not necessarily the exact day, but that's what we're celebrating on that time. It's the time of the giving of the Torah, so we're celebrating the giving of the Torah, and the Torah is compared to milk. Nimshalabo kedamrina b'perakam the Tainus, as the Gemara in Tainus says, that lama nimshalu Divrei Torah l'shlosha mashkin halalu b'mayim v'yayin v'chalav. So it explains. So here we go. We have it says. Oh, where'd it go? Okay, so he says. Okay, so the Gemara gives a specific reason, but the Gemara says that these three things we have mayim, water, yayin, wine, and chalav as milk. So because the Torah was compared to milk, therefore we eat milchiks. Now, in an expansion of this kind of concept, the Mishnah Berurah mentions that there were some people who actually had the custom of not only eating milk, but also having honey dishes. Having honey because the Torah is also compared to honey, right? In a specific pasuk. So far we have because remembrance of the sacrifice that was brought. That's one reason. Another reason is because the Torah is compared to milk, and according to that, some people have honey as well. A hint to this, the Aruch HaShulchan mentions, very interesting. So he says, in the Torah it says, Mincha chadasha l'Hashem b'shavuosechem. So the first letters of chadasha l'Hashem b'shavuosechem spells out chalav. So he just gives you a hint that in the Torah it's found where you can see that there's milk involved in Shavuos. Now, the more common reason that I always heard, which was mentioned in the Mishnah Berurah, he says, and I heard from one great person that he said that the reason that we eat milk is because when they were at Har Sinai, they accepted the Torah, and they left the mountain and they went back to their house and they couldn't eat anything. Why? Except for milk. Because meat, in order to eat, you have to properly kill the animal, you have to salt the animal, you have to properly prepare all the different parts. It takes time. Milk, you can have ready right then. So beforehand, they didn't have to worry about shechita because they didn't have to slaughter the animal properly. They didn't have the Torah. Now that they got the Torah, well, what's left is milk. So that's why they eat milk. That's what I also heard growing up. Now, very interesting is that the Kotzker Rebbe, he actually kind of mentions almost on the same idea, but slightly different. He says that the Gemara actually asks the question of why milk is mutter. Why are we allowed to drink milk? Because when the animal is alive, you can't eat a limb from a live animal. So at that point, the animal is not kosher. So why are we allowed to drink the milk from something that's not kosher? So the Gemara gives a reason, right? Because you learn from a pasuk, you learn from the Torah that the Torah specifically uses something to describe Eretz Yisrael as positive, and they wouldn't use something positive as if it's not kosher. So chalav is kosher; it has to be. So, but the bottom line is that the Torah says that there's a verse in the Torah that tells us basically that the milk is kosher. So he says, well, hold on a second. If milk was only kosher because you have the verse in the Torah, so then before you had the Torah, that means milk was not kosher. So he says maybe that the reason that they ate milk was because before the Torah, they couldn't eat milk. Now they can eat milk. And they say, oh, thank you, Hashem. Now we can finally eat milk. And it's a celebration. Okay, the last custom we'll talk about very briefly, because already we're getting short on time, is the staying up all night. So it seems that many people bring a concept from Kabbalah, that there's some sort of tikkun, there's some sort of something that you fix by staying up all night. And the simple understanding, as mentioned in the Magen Avram, is that, as this is again sourced in Shir HaShirim Rabbah, which is a medrash, that at the time of Matan Torah, when Hashem was already ready to give the Torah and he was there, it's the first time that you ever had somebody sleeping during the rabbi's speech, ever. Because Hashem was there, waiting, ready to give the Torah. And all of a sudden, all the Jews magically were sleeping. So, because they were sleeping then, so we decide that, you know what, we're going to stay up all night learning, and we're going to fix this issue that they had at Matan Torah. So again, just to review quickly, we spoke about how Shavuos is really connected with Sefiras Ha'omer. It's the 50th day, where we talk more about the giving of the Torah, not clearly in the past, because it's always continuous and we can always gain more from the Torah. And no matter how much, once we get a real connection to it, the more we have, the more we want. It's not going to hurt us. And everybody has the Torah equally. Nothing is, every Jew is different. There's no Jew who has a different amount of the Torah that they were given. All Jews were given the Torah equally. Then we discussed many different customs of putting the grass to remember Har Sinai, which had grass, and having the trees, because that's when we get judged on the trees. But some people don't do that because that became a non-Jewish minhag, a non-Jewish custom. And then we discussed about eating milk because of the different reasons. Either it's a remembrance of the sacrifice, or it's because the Torah is compared to milk, and we love the Torah, so therefore maybe we would eat honey as well. And then maybe because the milk just became permitted and we were so ecstatic that we could eat milk, or because milk was the only thing that we could eat so quickly because the meat we couldn't really prepare quick enough. And then finally, we stay up all night to try to fix the problems that were created in the times of Matan Torah, with the Jews seemingly being sleeping at the time when they should have been awake. Again, thank you everybody so much for listening in. If anybody has any questions or wants my source sheets, please reach out. My email is rabbikahn@jacksonvillecolo.com. Really easy to remember, and I hope everybody enjoyed. If anybody has any questions, please let me know.